Well, I'm joined now by Rob O'Neill, the former US Navy SEAL, led the operation to kill Osama bin Laden. Rob, great to talk to you. We talked to you earlier in this war, and the feeling then, I think, was that the Ukrainians were showing remarkable resilience and that they had a real chance with Western help in terms of military hardware in repelling Russia. But I've got to say, and you may not agree with this, but just my sort of overview of where we are is that it looks to me that Putin's playing the long game. He's playing it long militarily, and he's just edging his way through eastern Ukraine as he probably always wanted to. He's playing the long game with the sanctions. He's actually hoovering up cash from a lot of countries who still want his energy, and he knows that. So the sanctions just aren't working. I think he's playing a long game geopolitically with India and China. You know, there's a whole raft of countries out there who don't share our view that Putin necessarily is doing something despicable here. And you put it all together, and I'm reaching a pretty unfortunate conclusion that looks to me like Putin's getting what he wants and Russia is winning the war that it wants to win. What do you say to that?
Thanks for having me, Piers. Always great to be here. I think that Vladimir Putin's been playing the long game for Mother Russia since he was in the KGB. He was an intelligence officer there. He always kind of knew he was going to be in the spot where he is now as the premier running the place. And right now he's at a spot where, you know, he knew he wanted to get Georgia back. He wants to get Ukraine back. It's not long before he gets into Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, just starts moving. And he realizes that as long as we're doing what we can for climate change regulations and hindering ourselves, closing down our pipelines, not being energy independent, and that places in Europe and even here will fund his war in Russia just by buying his oil, as long as he doesn't care. He knows he's got the backing of China because China's just watching what we do, we as a coalition in Ukraine. And we're just lucky that the Ukrainian civilians who are in the middle of this, and God bless all of them, because no war is nice, and they're taking the brunt of it. They fought back with a little bit of backing from us. That's the only reason China hasn't rolled Taiwan yet. They're looking to be the big bullies because they know we don't have the will right now to necessarily fight toe-to-toe, and we definitely don't play the long game. And they said it best in Afghanistan when we were fighting the Taliban for so long. They said, look, they have the clocks, but we have the time, and
right.
And Putin's the same way.
Purely militarily, first of all, you one of the finest men to serve in the American military ever. When you look at this with your military expert eye, what are you seeing on the ground here? I mean, it just looks to me like he's playing a war of attrition, Putin, that he just keeps pounding. And the fact he unleashed this cruise missile right at the start of the G7 summit, almost like a massive two fingers to all those powers there to say, I don't care about any of you. I'm just doing whatever I like with impunity.
Well, he doesn't even care about his own people. He doesn't care about his own soldiers. The Russians have always been the type of people, even back to World War I, World War II, where they're like, here's your two soldiers, we'll give you one gun. When the guy with the gun dies, you pick it up and go. They don't care about their soldiers. They don't care about the civilians that are getting killed, as long as they maintain their personal power. That's all they're trying to do. And he knows he thinks eventually that he'll wear him down. He thought he'd roll right into Kiev and put in a puppet government like he did in Belarus, and thought he'd keep rolling through the Balkans, the Baltics, sorry. But it's just not happening. And again, it's the will of the Ukrainian people and the pride that they have. And our hat should be off to them. Yes, we're arming them, but they're fighting. Any good leader would see that the Russians have been lied to. The Russian troops are lied to. Their morale is low. They're getting fought with the resistance they never saw. They don't want to be there anymore either, but they don't have a choice. They have to fight. And it's just, again, attrition. Putin doesn't care. And I think he's terminally ill anyway. It doesn't matter to him. He's got his finger on the button too, and it's not long before he starts launching the big boys.
There was a moment today with Boris Johnson giving an interview. He's over with all the NATO leaders, in which he made this extraordinary claim that if Putin wasn't a man, things would be very different. Listen to this, Rob.
If Putin was a woman, which he obviously isn't, but if he were, I really don't think he would have embarked on a crazy macho war of invasion and violence in the way that he has. If you want a perfect example of toxic masculinity, it's what he's doing in Ukraine.
What did you think of that, Rob? I thought that was a ridiculous thing to say.
Well, I think if we had people that weren't like Putin or Boris Johnson in charge, maybe a lot of this nonsense wouldn't happen anyway. A lot of them get sucked in the system. Vladimir Putin's a narcissist and he's a sociopath. If there was anyone else in charge, it wouldn't have happened. look, I'm at a point now with all the nonsense happening ever since the lockdown. If all it took was us putting women in charge, I'm all for it. I'll be the first one in line to vote. Cool. Possibly, yes. I mean, I had that joke that if women were in charge, we wouldn't go to war, but we would have countries that wouldn't talk to each other for a few months. I can live with that at this point. But I don't think the toxic masculinity has anything to do with it. I think it's the toxic psychosis that he happens to have. And he's always been told he's the best. He's always been the top of the class. He's always known he's going to be number one. And it's just him being a jerk.
Rob, final question. I mean, can Ukraine actually win this war without NATO getting directly involved militarily?
I think they can fight to a standstill, and the only thing they can do is bleed them dry until they wanted to leave, because you saw what they did to Belarus, and Belarus is now helping with launch stuff in there. If they had the weaponry that we have and the technology that we have, yeah, they could beat them. If it comes down to us coming to them and NATO has to fight Russia, which we don't want, but we did just put 2 more countries in there today, we'll take Russia quickly. I don't want it to come to that. I've been to war. I wish there was no such thing as war. I wish there was no such thing as toxic masculinity in high places, but there is right now. And let's get a woman in charge. I'm all for it.